Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 20, The Hamptons. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. Hope you guys have had a really good week. My week's been a little interesting. Nothing too horrible. Well, I guess not for me personally, but for my husband, that's a different story. My husband discovered last week that he had a cyst on his jaw, and he got some emergency oral surgery last Friday to get it removed. It's totally fine, a benign cyst/tumor. It's called an OKC for any of you cyst/tumor experts out there. So yeah, nothing to worry about, but extremely painful to remove. Since also the cyst was wrapped around a nerve on his jaw. So it was quite an ordeal. He's been on some pretty heavy pain medication, but even with that pain medication, it has not been pain-free, and it's been pretty miserable for him. So we're just hopefully on the back end of that, and he's seemingly, doing better. Although I had to crack the whip. Yesterday, guys. It was Valentine's Day, but that didn't stop me from cracking the whip because he wasn't taking his pain meds like he should. I was like, you cannot wait for the pain to start and then take the pain medication. You know it's going to start. They had tools rooting around in your jawbone and along your nerve. So the pain's going to start. So you need to be extra on top of taking these pain medications so that you're not sitting around waiting for the ache to start and then chasing it. So there's my medical advice to all of you out there. Don't wait for the pain to start. Now, of course, I'm talking about something that is, going to be painful for you, not something like an unexpected headache or an unexpected, foot ache. You have to stay on top of the pain. And for my expert, amateur medical opinion, that is the way to handle pain. But anyway, after said whip cracking, things have gotten a lot better. Go figure. All right, so let's get into this episode. The synopsis for The Hamptons is as follows. While in the Hamptons to see a friend's ugly baby, everyone except George sees George's new girlfriend topless. Jerry's girlfriend sees George naked after he's had a swim in cold water and is still affected by shrinkage. Kramer steals a filled lobster trap, which George uses to secretly feed Jerry's kosher girlfriend. Elaine is confused when a handsome doctor refers to both her and the ugly baby as breathtaking. This episode was written by Peter Melman and Carol Leifer. Yay, we have a female writer in there. All right, we start out in Jerry's car. Jerry, Elaine, and Kramer are driving up to the Hamptons to see the baby. You gotta see the baby. We get a really good Elaine impression of Carol there. Jerry thinks that these people are having babies just to get people to visit them. And Elaine points out, well, hey, at least we get a weekend in the Hamptons out of it. Kramer asks if Jerry wears silk underwear and to put that at the top of his list. Jerry says no, a little too delightful. George and Jane are going up there as well. Jane is George's new girlfriend. And Elaine points out, isn't it weird that they're going to spend the whole weekend together even though they haven't had sex? And Jerry says George is pretty excited about it. It's like she's signed a letter of intent. Rachel, Jerry's girlfriend, will be joining them later. She's going to be taking the train up to the Hamptons. Elaine cannot believe that Rachel's religious father is letting her see Jerry again after the Schindler's List makeout incident. Jerry says, I brought him some kishka. All right, my take on this opening scene, it's a good opener. We're getting a lot of information out, like the who, the what, the where of the episode. We get it all out in this opening scene. Something happens in this scene, and I've mentioned it before, but I love when the main four enjoy each other's humor. It's like when Elaine does her impression of Carol, it truly cracks Kramer up in the back seat. He's laughing. I just love that touch of them enjoying each other's company. I think sometimes in sitcoms, and I understand it's like when you're around people a lot, if they're showing the same group of friends or family or whatever, not everything's going to elicit a laugh, but I do like when they have those moments of like Kramer laughing at something that Elaine says or Elaine laughing at something Jerry does. Like it's a nice kind of touch of their relationship that we see. Even though there's a lot of exposition that comes out in this scene, I think it's done pretty well. A lot of information. Like I said, we learned how Jerry is allowed to see Rachel again. We learned the situation with George and his girlfriend. And of course, basically the foundation of the episode, we learn where they're going, why they're going there. What makes it work and feel more conversational, I think, is a little non sequitur added in there. Like when Kramer mentions the silk underwear. It never comes back. We never hear about it again. But it's in there for the sake of making the conversation feel more believable. All right, next we are in Jane's car. George and Jane are talking about cough medicine and how they love the taste of cough medicine. Then there's voiceover for George talking about if he reaches over and touches her breast now, she'd scream. But at this time tomorrow, I can touch it all I want. Is this what guys really think? My Lord. And they go further into this whole cough medicine thing, club soda and Pitocin. Apparently it's very refreshing. Jane asks if they're almost there. And he says, yeah, but we need to stop and get some Hampton tomatoes at a vegetable stand for George's mother. Jane's kind of not into that. She says, can you get them later? I really want to get there and get some sun. Now, the actress who plays Jane is Melora Walters. I almost said Melora Hardin, who plays Jan on The Office. Jan, Melora. Anyway, Melora Walters. And she became quite the accomplished actress after this appearance. I mean, she was accomplished before, but certainly blew up a little bit more after her Seinfeld appearance. She's known for Magnolia, Boogie Nights. She's a series regular in Pen 15. And I actually remember watching her on the HBO series Big Love. I watched that for a few seasons. I sort of fell off of it and it got too crazy and out of control. But I remember being blown away when I learned it was the same actress from this episode because I don't know if any of you have watched Big Love, but she was married to the patriarch of the, whatever family it was, the big guy the old guy who was in charge of everything. Anyway, so she was very dowdy, no makeup, nothing. So all I knew was she was a fantastic actress in that series. But then I don't know how I found out that she was Jane in this episode. And I was like, whoa, that's so crazy. What range she has. So she's a really, really great actress. But I gotta say, I don't love her performance as Jane. Now, knowing how talented she is, this way of playing Jane, it must have been her choice. I mean, the little airy voice, and I feel like the delivery is kind of robotic. It just doesn't do it for me. I'm not a fan of how she plays Jane. All right, next we're at the Hamptons house. We're on the deck of the house. Kramer asks Jerry to put some lotion on his back. Who are you, Mrs. Robinson? George has to leave to get the tomatoes, and Jane doesn't want to come. He leaves and Jane goes to the pool. Elaine comes out in a huge hat, and then there's Maude. But she's very proud of her love of shade because look at her face, no lines. Jerry asks, when is this momentous event to see the baby? Elaine's like, I don't know, it's taking a nap or something. Well, Kramer wants to check out and see if there are any girls on the beach, asks Elaine if she wants to join. No thanks, I've got plenty of girlfriends. And Jerry spots Jane topless. They all, of course, look. Yo, ma, Boutros, golly. And Elaine just breaks it down pretty easily. Nice rack. Right then, Carol comes out. You can see the baby now. In a minute, Carol. This is weird, wild stuff, Jerry says. George hasn't even seen her. Well, I guess it's a sneak preview. Kramer says maybe she's trying to create a buzz, get some good word of mouth going. Oh, and then here she comes right over to them. She asks if anyone wants a drink. No thanks. I'm good. Kramer, I can't tell if Kramer accepts. He just goes, Kramer says, all right, show's over. He exits. And Jerry and Elaine are still just kind of dumbfounded as to what just happened. My take on this scene, it's a really fun scene. And I just have to go, I know this is an Elaine podcast, but I have to, this is sort of related to Elaine, and I'll get to why, but how the hell did George score Jane? I mean, I'm sorry, but while Elaine gets, for the most part, sort of dumpy dudes, we're supposed to believe that George attracts this sort of bombshell. When I look at her style, she's sort of like a modern Ginger from Gilligan's Island movie star type woman. Like we're supposed to believe that George can attract that. And the reason I bring that up is like he's like telling her, oh, a really charming story about finding change at the bottom of a pool. Like what? You must have been excited. Like, what the hell? Like, what does she see in him? It's just the double standard of the caliber of women cast as the girlfriends for predominantly Jerry and George, and sometimes Kramer too. While Elaine, for whatever reason, has to get schlubby dudes, when arguably Elaine is the best looking of the bunch. So it just makes no sense. I'm being shallow. I realize that. Don't get upset with me. But I think this is just to point out the double standard here with men and women, and just something that's gone on since the dawn of television, really. The man can look like anything, like any kind of everyday schlubby man, but the wife needs to be impeccable. And I say a big fuck that to all of that shit. All right, moving on. I love the ribbing of Elaine's hat and how she sort of claps back and she's like, look, there are no lines on my face. I'm not ashamed of my hat. And then I also thought, could this have been her earliest iteration of the urban sombrero? I mean, is this a coincidence that she's got this big hat at the Hamptons and then, yeah, her first order of business when she's president of Peterman is that she introduces the urban sombrero? I don't know. I think there's something there. This is a little thing, but I love that Kramer asks her if she wants to join him to look for girls. It's so earnest. Like, he's just like, Elaine, you want to come? Like, I think he really wants her to. He doesn't ask Jerry, who I know he's with Rachel, but like, I don't think that would stop Jerry from trying to scope out chicks, like whatever. So I just love that the choice was made that Kramer wants Elaine to go with him. The reveal of Jane being topless off screen is really fun. I love that Elaine gets the line, nice rack. Everyone has really fun face acting moments when she comes over to ask them if they want a drink. And did any of you catch Elaine sort of sneaking a peek at her own boobs after Jane goes inside? I love it. This is a great thing that JLD does. She's done it before, sort of if a busty woman is around or is talked about, she sort of sizes herself up. I've seen her do it a few more times in the series. It's really fun. And also just a little goof, I guess it's called, but you can totally see the flesh-colored pasties that Melora Walters is wearing. And you see it not only just kind of from the side, like a side boob angle, but when she's laying there and George is telling, oh my God, this amazing story about the change he found in the pool, you see it underneath her bikini top. So I'm going, did people just think you couldn't see it? Because you can totally see it. Anyway, if you're interested in seeing a little goof like that, it's clearly visible in this scene. All right, next we are in the baby's room. Carol enters first, telling baby Adam, Jerry, and Elaine are here. Elaine enters. She seems kind of excited. You cutie snuggly baby. Apparently, the baby is hideous. And Jerry and Elaine are trying their best to sort of dote on him, but really not hiding their expression about how ugly he is. But Carol can't see it. It's a face only a mother can love, right? Isn't he gorgeous? They, of course, lie and say, yes, gorgeous. All right, my take on this scene. This is all genius from JLD. From the little baby talk entrance, I always love it. I just love it. You cutie snuggly baby. I don't know if that was scripted or what, but it's just amazing. I love it. And then the horror when she sees the kid. And I think maybe that's why, maybe it is scripted, but the juxtaposition of just like, oh, you boo boo, you go goo. Like it's just all up to JLD's reaction to let us know how ugly that baby is. So the transition from baby talk into complete like repressed, like almost scream of how ugly it is just perfect. I love every second of her performance in this scene. And also, I love how they carried over how Carol just always yells at Michael. In the last episode where we saw them, she was calling him an idiot because he didn't know where the camera was. He's such an idiot. And now he's letting bugs in. It's a different Michael, but treated the same by Carol. All right, next we just get a little Kramer beach montage. We see Kramer on the beach, climbing the lifeguard station, talking to some femininas, and then getting kicked out by the security guard. We see him with a metal detector, and it gets to a dude's head, probably has a metal plate in his head, scares the crap out of Kramer. And finally, we see him find a rope and kind of follow along with it. Next, we're back on the deck. Elaine and Jerry come out onto the deck. They're sort of hunched over, recovering. And they say, God, was that the ugliest baby? Elaine says, I couldn't look. It was like a Pekingese. Oh, too much chlorine in that gene pool. And they say, you know what? They'll never know. No one's ever going to tell them. Oh, it's a must-lie situation. And then Jerry remembers, you know what? Let's not tell George that we saw Jane topless. Elaine's like, oh, no, I don't think so. Remind me to tell Kramer, Jerry says. And then we see a quick shot of Kramer pulling the lobster trap from the ocean. My take, this is really fun. I love that they need to physically recover from how ugly the baby was, as if they just ran away from a monster. The little giggle from JLD when Jerry mentions they should keep their peep show with Jane a secret always makes me chuckle. I think it's such a great reaction. All right, next we're in the baby's room. The doctor's there putting some ointment on Adam. Carol calls Elaine in and introduces her to their pediatrician, Dr. Ben Pfeffer. Well, Elaine is very intrigued. He's a very cute doctor, after all, and we know Elaine's affinity for that. Carol, of course, is still doting on Adam. Isn't he gorgeous? Now, this time, Elaine answers confidently in the affirmative, but only because she's directing the comment towards Dr. Ben Pfeffer. He asks Elaine, do you have any children? She says no, but she would love to have a baby. She's just dying to have a baby. And he says, a beautiful woman like you should. You're quite breathtaking. Oh, Elaine just beams from that compliment. I'm breathtaking? And Carol says, and he's very particular. Ben, you're staying over tonight, right? And Carol is looking at Elaine with intention. She's trying to set something up here. He says, yeah, sure. And Elaine turns and just kind of yeses to herself. Jerry walks in, avoiding looking at the baby, doesn't want to look in the crib. He says he's going to pick up Rachel. Yeah, see ya. Once again, Carol just in love with her baby. Just look at him. And Dr. Ben Pfeffer says, yes, he really is breathtaking. Elaine whips her head at him in confusion. My take on this scene, oh yes, we get flirty Elaine in full effect. I love it. This scene is a masterclass in physicality by JLD. Yes, I'm talking about physicality again. I will not apologize for it. But but if you're still confused about what I mean about physicality, watch this scene. I don't know. I'm talking like this. Her total demeanor changes when she sees Dr. Pfeffer. She's acting with her whole body the entire time while she's flirting with him. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. There was commentary by Peter Melman and Carol Leifer, and they even say, they're like, oh my gosh, when Julia's flirting, I just look at how she moves. I'm like, it's called physicality. I know. And I can understand why she's so excited. I was just kind of putting myself in Elaine's shoes here. She just thinks she's going to have a weekend visiting friends. Nothing too exciting, especially because it's to see a baby, which she's not that interested in. But now there's this unexpected turn of events, a real possibility of hooking up with a hot doctor. Her yes movement is so warranted. So I'm excited for Elaine for this possibility because this weekend has just totally flipped as to what her experience could be. And then at the end, that whip to him with her face when he calls the baby breathtaking. So well done. I love the downturned mouth and confused face. And then she looks down at the baby all confused. It's perfectly done. And I have to say, they do a good job keeping it vague. Was he just being nice about the baby, or does he just have a super broad definition of what breathtaking is? It's not very obvious, which is good. It serves the plot very well. All right, next we're back on the deck. Rachel has arrived now. She's sitting with Jerry, and she said how she had to sit backwards in the train, and he likes that. It's like going back in time. George enters and greets Rachel with a hearty, "Hey, Rachel!" She gives a quick hi and leaves to get unpacked. George is insulted by that greeting. Yeah, she's got greeting problems. Kramer comes back with lobster for everybody, fresh out of the ocean. Oh, George is so excited. What a weekend. Kramer's like, yeah, I know. I saw Jane topless. Oh, the laugh break there is so great. Everyone's like, no. And Jerry's like reaction, God damn it, I didn't get to tell him. George is like so confused. What? He's like, yeah, we all did. Jerry has to explain. Oh, when you left with the tomatoes, she lied out topless. And he thinks, well, face down on her chest. No, face up on her back? Yeah, and she walked around. He's immediately mad. And you looked. Kramer has no problem saying, yeah, she's got a great body, buddy. And Kramer exits. Jerry's like, you know what? Just think of me like a doctor. George wants to know how good a look he got. Like if a police sketch artist needed to capture her, they'd pick her up in about 10 minutes. Of course, George is just beside himself. It's not fair, Jerry. It's not fair. Well, what do you want to do? You want to see Rachel naked? Yes. The punishment should fit the crime. All right, next we're in Jerry and Rachel's bedroom. Elaine is discussing the breathtaking comment with Rachel and Jerry. No one's ever called me breathtaking before. And same with Jerry. And she says, if he thinks that baby is breathtaking, then who's not breathtaking? And Jerry points out, look, the mother was in the room. Maybe that's why he said it. Elaine's like, yeah, maybe. Gosh, I have to find out. Well, how are you going to do that? Elaine's confident. I can be very clever. Rachel says she's going to go take a swim. Elaine says, oh, yeah, I will too. I'll meet you out there. So Elaine exits, and as she exits, George is approaching. She tells him not to go in because Rachel's getting undressed. So George agrees, but then turns right back around and walks right in. Rachel is just about to take her pants off and jumps up. Oh, sorry. Don't you knock? Anyway, George was wondering if they had any gum. The water was cold and the chewing warms me up. We don't have any gum. And George exits, and Rachel calls him a strange man. Rachel then asks about the baby. What is this baby I've heard so much about? And Jerry's like, well, yes, it's something to see. It's never seen anything quite so objectionable. So Jerry tells Rachel which door is the baby's room. And so she goes down, she enters, and it turns out to be George's room, and he's just taken off his swim shorts. Ah, sorry, I thought this was the baby's room. I'm really sorry. I think we all know this moment. She looks down at his ding-ding and laughs and exits. And George is left there looking down, knowing what she was laughing at. I was in the pool! I was in the pool! Iconic moment. All right, my take on this scene, I'm just going to comment on the Elaine portion at the top of the scene. I just like that we get to see how much it's bothering her, this whole breathtaking comment, and that we see she's got a little plan. She's going to find out what he meant. All right, next we are in Jerry's room. George is so upset. Did she do it on purpose? And Jerry's like, no, it was my fault. I told her the wrong door. Well, ordinarily, George wouldn't mind, but he had just come back from swimming in the cold water. Ooh, Jerry knows what he's talking about. Shrinkage. Yes, significant shrinkage. That was not me, Jerry. And George is worried. What if she tells Jane? Jerry really doesn't think so. They don't think they're like us. George is like, no, women are worse. They talk about everything. And Jerry thinks that, women should probably know about shrinkage. Well, how would they know about shrinkage? Just then, Elaine walks by and they call her in. And they ask her, do women know about shrinkage? What do you mean, like laundry? No. And they explain when a man is in the pool afterwards. She's shocked. It shrinks? Like a frightened turtle. Why does it shrink? It just does. And she has a great line. I don't know how you guys walk around with those things, and exits. My take on this scene, Elaine gets the fun end of the scene. I love that. I do love how they call her in and she runs in looking over her shoulder. They're like little kids telling secrets. I love when they have that energy. It's really cute. And yeah, there's nothing better than getting the blow line of a scene. And I'm glad that they gave that to JLD. All right, next we're at the dinner table. Everyone is enjoying the lobster except for Rachel. She explains to Kramer that she's kosher. She doesn't eat shellfish. And he admires that. You're so pious. Carol hears the baby and she's like, oh, the baby's crying. I'm going to go get him. They all try to stop her. They don't want the ugly baby at the table. But she says she's going to go get him anyway. George gets Rachel's attention and points out how his t-shirt shrunk in the laundry. That's what it does. It shrinks things. To which Elaine says, "Tell us more, Mr. Science." I like when that's going on, when George starts in, especially because it's focused on Rachel. You see on either side of him, Jerry and Elaine, like totally knowing what he's doing. They're just like, oh my God. I like that shot of the three of them is perfect. Rachel then whispers something to Jane and they start giggling, which just sets George off. What are you telling secrets? It's very impolite to tell secrets. And Jane's like, "It's nothing, George. What is with you?" Jerry leans over and says, "Easy, big fella." Michael asks where Kramer got the lobsters, and he finds out it was a commercial lobster trap that Kramer got a hold of. And he says to Kramer, that's against the law. Kramer's like, take it easy. But apparently Michael's father was a lobsterman and he came home stinking of brine and he sent him to law school from the lobsters he caught. Kramer's kind of like, okay, whatever, and gets up from the table. Carol enters with the baby and of course, Kramer just screams in horror. This is the first time he's seeing ugly baby Adam. My take on this scene, it's not much to say here, but just a side note. Here in my house, we quote Elaine all the time with the line, "Tell us more, Mr. Science." Anytime someone in my house drops like really obvious science knowledge, they are subjected to someone saying that line to them. And it always gets a chuckle, usually by the person saying it, not so much by the person receiving it. All right, next we're back on the deck. It's at night this time, and Dr. Ben Pfeffer is out there enjoying the stars. I think he's just sort of pointing at different stars, looking up at the sky. Elaine approaches and says, "Some night, huh?" Well, he agrees. "Some dinner, huh?" Oh, yes, he agrees with that too. "Some house, huh?" Oh, he loves it. It's designed by Mark Fargman. "Some ugly baby, huh?" "What did you say?" Oops. She recovers and says, "Some snuggly baby." Oh, he is something. But Elaine's not letting up. To tell you the truth, Dr. Pfeffer, I was surprised to hear you use breathtaking to describe a baby because you also used it for me. And he says, "Well, Elaine, sometimes you just say a thing like that to be nice." And that doesn't help at all. My take on this scene, I like the structure of this scene. We get to see Elaine's plan in action, her cleverness that she was talking about earlier. And I think she pulls it off pretty well. I love confrontational Elaine. Now, it doesn't mean she's being rude or aggressive. That's not at all how she's being here, but she's very just direct with him. And I like that she addresses the confusion. But unfortunately, she's sort of left more confused. I personally think Ben was just being nice about the baby because Adam seems to be objectively ugly, with everyone, unless you're his parents. So I'm thinking Dr. Pfeffer is, just being polite. All right, next we're in Jerry's bedroom and George's bedroom. Jerry finds out Rachel told Jane about his shrinkage, and she's like, "It's not a big deal. You guys are the ones that are obsessed about this stuff, not us." And Rachel's really sure. I don't think it would matter to Jane. Cut to George in Jane's bedroom, and Jane is packing to leave. "You're leaving now?" And George totally knows. "You spoke to your friend Rachel." And George assures her that a certain something is all it should be and more. "I'm sure it is." And he says, "You don't understand. There was shrinkage." Next, we are in the kitchen. The kitchen is completely dark, and Rachel is sneaking in and gets startled by Kramer sitting at the table. Turns out she wanted to try the lobster. Kramer won't let her. Well, it wouldn't be kosher. And she tries to fight him for it, but he keeps her away. And then there's a quick cut to Rachel entering the bedroom, asking about the car she just heard. "Oh, that was just Jane driving back to New York in the middle of the night." Rachel was wrong about Jane caring about George's shrinkage. All right, next we are at breakfast the next morning. Everyone is thanking George. He's cooking scrambled eggs, and oh my gosh, it's so delicious. Elaine says it's the best scrambled eggs she's ever had. And Dr. Ben Pfeffer agrees. "Yes, the whole breakfast is just breathtaking." And Elaine gives him the stink eye from across the table. Rachel and Jerry enter. Rachel thanks Kramer for saving her the night before. She tells everyone, "Well, I wanted to try the lobster, but he stopped me." And Kramer says, well, I knew you would have regretted it for the rest of your life. And she agrees she would have. George approaches with a pan of eggs and confirms, oh, you eat eggs, don't you, Rachel? She says she does. He puts some on her plate and she just digs in and loves them. These are so good. He's so glad she's enjoying them. And he comes over with a lobster bib and says, maybe you should be eating them with this. There's lobster in these eggs? Not much. They tend to shrink in the water. Rachel rushes out of there with her hand over her mouth and Jerry follows. Elaine says, well, this turned out to be one hell of a weekend. A police officer approaches the door and Michael talks to him and they're looking for a lobster poacher. Michael takes no time to point out Kramer and finks on him. Meanwhile, George exits to apologize to Rachel and then we hear a scream. Looks like he walked in on her. Don't you ever knock! My take on this scene, not, much to talk about here, except it's just resolving all the storylines for the most part. Great face acting, but also great eating acting from JLD after Dr. Ben Pfeffer's breakfast is breathtaking comment. I love the way she's eating the orange and just kind of moving her mouth around, giving him the stink eye. Oh, so funny. And what a dork. Can you stop saying breathtaking, Dr. Ben Pfeffer? Jeez, pick a new word. All right, next, last scene of the episode. We're on the car ride home. Jerry, George, and Elaine are all riding back together. George doesn't understand why Rachel had to ride back with Michael and Carol. Elaine understands, hey, if you had seen me naked, I wouldn't want to be in a car with you either. Well, apparently, Kramer had to stay back because of the poaching offense. And instead of paying the $1,000 fine, we see him picking up some trash along the side of the road. They see a tomato stand and George wants to stop and get some more tomatoes. And they see Michael's car. Oh, there's Rachel. George looks out the window to see them and gets pelted in the face with a tomato. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Uh-oh, you just got invited to your best friend's beach wedding on a sun-drenched island. Sure, it's paradise for most people, but you are a shade worshiper. Not to worry. From the makers of Big Coat comes a new product that will put your sun worries at ease. The Big Ass Hat. Who needs gloopy sunscreen that requires so much reapplying? Just wear your Big Ass Hat. With circumferences ranging from 2 to 5 feet, you can curl up under your big ass hat and feel safe from that evil fireball in the sky. I volunteered to help at my kids' field day last year, and I was in charge of the water balloon toss. 7 hours on the black asphalt on a sunny day. Luckily, I had my big ass hat, so I was in the shade all day. Plus, the brim was handy to hide some water balloons and pelt some brats. Yeah, I was asked not to volunteer again. Do you need to travel with your big ass hat? No problem. Using state-of-the-art materials, Big Ass Hat is designed to shrink in water. Just put it in a tub, watch it shrink down to the size of a tomato, and slip it easily into your luggage. Then, 5 minutes of blow drying gets it back to Big Ass Hat shape. How does it work? I'm no expert, but we have Mr. Science here to explain. Tell us more, Mr. Science. I sure will. Big Ass Hat will shrink in water because that's what water does. It shrinks things. Thanks, Mr. Science. Order your Big Ass Hat today by calling 555-BIG-ASS. That's 555-BIGASSS. The extra S is for shade and necessary to have a functioning phone number. The days of lurking in the shadows are behind you. Now you can join in with your Big Ass Hat and be comfortable at all sunny events. Big Ass Hat, a shady business you can trust. And we're back. All right, we are diving right into Greg's sack lunch because the extras weren't very compelling to me, and especially not Elaine-centric. So it's time to open Greg's sack lunch. First, Greg's favorite scene. He says, my absolute favorite scene in this classic Seinfeld episode is the one where Elaine, Jerry, and Kramer all see Jane topless. It's such a funny dynamic how they all, including Elaine, see her and George doesn't. The conversation where Elaine says, "Why do you think we're getting a sneak preview?" And Kramer says, "Maybe she's trying to create a buzz." There are so many scenes in this episode, but this one is more low key and it doesn't include George or Kramer acting over the top. The comedy is in the simple dialogue. I agree. Yes, that is a great scene. and when you see them all looking up and like seeing it off camera, her toplessness, it's so well done. And I love that device. She does end up coming into the scene as well. But yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And I agree that maybe she's trying to create a buzz. It's such a funny, what a funny, first of all, the line's funny, but also the concept, would someone really do that? Ooh, George is gone. Let me see if I can get his friends to tell him about my boobs before he gets to see them. Just it's such a funny concept. And sometimes you're right, Greg. Sometimes the comedy doesn't have to be over the top. It can just be simple dialogue and it's the most effective. All right, Greg's favorite Elaine moment. There are so many great Elaine moments in this episode, but I think my favorite is when her and Jerry first see the baby and then discuss how ugly it is after. Nobody ever says a baby is ugly, so the whole premise is funny. The follow-up where she meets the doctor and is confused how he can think both Elaine and the baby are breathtaking. She does so much as flirty Elaine, and then it rolls into straight-up face acting for the rest of the scene. I have to give it up to Elaine's friend for inviting the doctor to stay over. She's being a great wing woman here. Actually, I have to also add, the way she eats the orange when the doctor calls the breakfast breathtaking is just a hilarious little moment. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I agree with all of this. I think I did point out eating acting by Elaine at the end there because, yeah, she's taking out her frustration on that wedge of orange, which is just amazing. Yeah, I didn't really speak too much about it, but I do love how Carol is such a wing woman here. As soon as she hears him call Elaine breathtaking, you see Carol's eyes kind of dart to Elaine and back. And so her wheels are turning. She's so enamored with Adam, but I give Carol credit here. She's like, all right, let me see if I can hook up my friend. So I do appreciate that very much about Carol. She might have an annoying voice. She might be too obsessed with her baby, but hey, you know what? At least she's got Elaine's best interest at heart. And lastly, in Greg's sack lunch is his scene swap idea. He says, "I don't think I would change a single thing in this episode. Everyone gets a lot of comedy, and the fact that they're all together at this beach house, yet still having multiple storylines that overlap each other, really works well. The weakest plot is Kramer stealing the lobsters, but it gives him something to do, and it plays into George's revenge on Rachel. This is a classic George episode, but everyone delivers, including Jerry, who is really just playing off the other situations happening. I'm glad they even brought Elaine into the shrinkage conversation, even if just for a small bit, so that she can be in the loop on that story as well. This is one of the most famous episodes of the series, specifically for the shrinkage factor, but every part of it plays well and is still funny all these years later." Totally agree. Yeah, there's great overlap here. Broken record time again. There's so many things I'm a broken record about in this podcast. I apologize. Physicality, more Elaine, but also the dovetailing of all the storylines. That's when the episodes work the best. Whenever there are separate storylines and they don't touch, the episodes aren't as strong. So I so appreciate how everyone's sort of involved in everyone else's business here. And that makes sense. They're all, in the same house. So everyone's going to be touching each other with, their situations and what's going on. So I really do like that. Okay. Thank you so much, Greg, for sharing all of these wonderful thoughts and ideas. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I gotta say, it's the entire flirting scene. It's so fantastic. It's got everything I love about JLD, flirty Elaine. It's got physicality, and especially that turn at the end after the doctor says the baby is breathtaking, that look in her eye, the whipping of her head. It's just fantastic. I will say a close second is the goo moment when she sees the baby for the first time. And my final thoughts. This is a really fun episode. Like Greg said, it's iconic. I mean, it's of course best known for the shrinkage and that scene we've all seen a billion times. I thought this was the baby's room. I was in the pool. But, sort of not focusing on that, even though that is hilarious. I like seeing the four in another location altogether. And usually, I will say, I'm not a fan of when shows like pluck casts from their sort of home sets and put them somewhere else. I guess it's like that homebody part of me. I like my casts to be in familiar places. But I think this one works because the location isn't working against the function of the show. We're still getting all of that classic Seinfeld scenario, that we love. And it's just happens to be at the beach. And the location does inform what's going on, but it doesn't take away from, what the core, what we love about the show at its core. So I think that's why it works and I don't mind it. I'm trying to think of an example of like when a cast, like do special episodes in different cities or whatever. It's like, it just feels like foreign. It's like they almost write it differently because they're in a different city or a different location. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that usually, but like I said, it works here because the location is actually enhancing all of that core Seinfeld stuff that we love. I do feel like Elaine could have gotten a little bit more with her plot. I don't think it's as fleshed out as the others. Now, I wrote this before I read Greg's Sack Lunch, and so I think I have to tweak this a little bit because I think she definitely has more than Kramer. Kramer really does only have the lobsters, which that's probably the weakest plot. But of course, I'm just super greedy when it comes to Elaine. And her plot, really centers around one word, breathtaking. That's really what it centers around. And to be honest, I just said that Kramer has the weakest plot and doesn't get as much as everyone else, but my scene swap idea would be to cut out some of the beach montage for maybe another scene with Elaine and the doctor, maybe some more mixed signals, or just somehow get Kramer involved in the breathtaking conversation. You know how they always try and bring in Kramer to like get someone to tell the truth or be the brutal person telling someone what they need to know. Yeah, that could have been fun. All in all, this is a fun, classic episode of Seinfeld. I needed a skosh more Elaine, but what the hell else is new, right? And I think that's all I can say about the Hamptons. Oh, we're getting so close. The next episode, the opposite, will be the last one of season 5. Super exciting. I want to remind you all out there, please follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. Or if you're old school and you just want to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.